The missing race. The galaxy had known many species. Some were ancient, some were young. Each had their place in the great expanse of the universe, and each had a voice in the Galactic Council. But there was one species, one that had once been invited to sit among the stars, that had mysteriously vanished from the records of history. Earth's seat was empty. For centuries, the Galactic Council had convened. Representatives from countless civilizations gathered, discussing peace, trade, and the fate of the galaxy. But Earth's seat, though once filled, was now perpetually vacant. No one knew why. The council members had long accepted this as a strange but accepted fact. They spoke of Earth in whispers, calling it the lost world, or the vanished species. Ancient records spoke of humans, a race of remarkable potential, who had once stood proud in the galaxy. They were said to be intelligent, driven by curiosity and ambition, but they had somehow disappeared without a trace. Their seat in the council had been abandoned. Among the council members, there was no doubt that Earth's absence had sparked a mix of curiosity and fear. Some believed that humans had destroyed themselves, their violent nature too much for their world to handle. Others thought they had simply faded into obscurity, leaving no mark on the stars. But there were always whispers. Whispers among those who had seen the ancient records, whispers among those who understood the depths of the stars. Something about Earth's absence didn't sit right. The missing race intrigued the council, and yet they were unwilling to ask questions. It had been centuries. If humans had truly vanished, there was nothing to worry about, right? At the start of each council meeting, the empty seat of Earth loomed over the table. It was a symbol of a past that had slipped away, a past that no one wanted to revisit. But one day, as the members settled into their places for another summit, something strange happened. The chair that had been empty for so long began to draw attention. An encrypted transmission, mysterious and full of static, was detected. It wasn't unusual to receive signals from other galaxies or far-flung civilizations. But this one was different. The signal was faint, almost as if it were struggling to make itself known. It was as if the message was coming from a place where no one expected. Earth. At first, the message was ignored. The council members were busy with more pressing matters. But one delegate, a young and curious representative from the Andorian race, had heard rumors about Earth and its mysterious disappearance. He couldn't ignore it. His instincts told him that this signal was important. So he took it upon himself to investigate. Late one evening, when the council had adjourned, he returned to the council chamber and examined the signal. It wasn't like any communication he had seen before. The encryption was advanced, but not impossible to decode. As he worked through the layers of security, a message began to form. The words were simple, but the meaning behind them sent a chill down his spine. We were never gone. That was all. No explanation, no more details, just those 3 words. The message echoed through the chamber, leaving the delegate in stunned silence. For a moment, he could barely process what he had just uncovered. We were never gone. The words seemed to resonate in his mind, an echo of something far larger than he had expected. Could it be? Was Earth really still out there? Were humans still alive? Had they been hiding all this time? Or had they been waiting, watching, until the right moment? He quickly shared the information with his superior. The news spread like wildfire through the council's ranks. The ancient race that had disappeared centuries ago might not be gone after all. The question that everyone had feared and wondered about was finally being answered. But no one was prepared for the truth. The council convened immediately to discuss the implications of this discovery. Earth's empty seat was no longer just a mystery, it was a warning. The Xoreth Empire, one of the galaxy's most feared species, had expanded its power far and wide. They ruled with an iron fist, conquering worlds and crushing any who dared oppose them. But what if Earth had been waiting, preparing in secret? What if they had the power to challenge the galaxy's most dominant force? The idea was terrifying. The council members had their own histories, their own reasons for fearing Earth. Some knew about the ancient humans' violence, their wars, and their unpredictable nature. They had always believed that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. But now, it seemed they had made a grave mistake. With the discovery of the message, everything changed. The empty seat of Earth no longer represented a forgotten race. It represented a power that could have remained hidden, waiting to rise again. And the Council knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humans were coming. The young delegate, who had first discovered the message, stood up in the council chamber. His voice echoed with urgency. We must act quickly. If Earth has returned, we must prepare. The universe may not be ready for what's to come. The council members exchanged nervous glances. They were no longer dealing with a mere historical mystery. They were dealing with the return of a species that had been lost, a species that might just change the balance of power in the galaxy. And so, as the council members sat in tense silence, the one question lingered in the air. What did humans want? The council chamber was silent. The weight of the message, we were never gone, hung in the air like a shadow that refused to fade. The council members, each representing some of the most powerful species in the galaxy, sat frozen in thought. For centuries, Earth had been a ghost, a forgotten world with an abandoned seat. Now, that ghost was speaking again. High Chancellor Vorn of the Xoreth Empire was the first to break the silence. His species had ruled over countless civilizations, and they had never feared anything before. But this was something different. This is impossible, Vorn growled, his claws tapping against the polished stone of the council table. The humans disappeared. There has been no trace of them for centuries. And now, they simply send a message. No warnings, no explanations. What kind of game are they playing? Beside him, the Andorian delegate, Ralvik, swallowed hard. He was the one who had discovered the message. He had been prepared for surprise, but not for this level of panic. He had expected skepticism, doubt, but not fear. I have run the message through multiple decryption algorithms, Ralvik said. It is authentic. There is no forgery. The transmission came from a deep sector of space, one that has been uncharted for generations. Then we must find out where they are, a reptilian council member hissed. If humans exist, if they are still alive, we must understand their intentions. Vorn shook his head. You don't understand what you're asking, he muttered. Ralvik frowned. What do you mean? The Thorathian leader leaned forward, his piercing yellow eyes locking onto Ralvik's. You are young. You were not here when humans first joined the council. You don't know what they were capable of. Ralvik hesitated. He had read the records, of course. There were stories, whispers of a species that had advanced at an alarming rate, of a species that refused to be controlled or conquered. He had read about their wars, their resilience, their brutal efficiency in battle. But they had vanished before any real conflict could happen, hadn't they? The records say they were intelligent but reckless, Ralvik said carefully. A species with great potential but prone to self-destruction. Vorn let out a low, humorless laugh. Is that what they told you? His gaze swept across the room. That is what we wanted to believe. That is what we told ourselves when they left. But the truth is far worse. The other council members shifted uncomfortably. They had all heard different versions of the human story, but few had lived through it. The truth, Vorn continued, his voice dropping into a near whisper, is that we didn't abandon humans. We feared them. Ralvik's breath caught in his throat. Feared them. Vorn nodded. When humans first appeared, we underestimated them. We believed they were just another primitive race, eager to prove themselves. And at first, they acted the part. They learned. They adapted. But then, something changed. They surpassed species that had been in the stars for millennia. They built weapons we could not counter, developed strategies we could not predict. They did in a few centuries what took us tens of thousands of years. And they did it with ease. A deep silence followed his words. And then suddenly, they were gone. Vorn said. No war, no destruction, no collapse. Just gone. Ralvik felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? I'm saying, Vorn said slowly, that the last time humans were here, we tried to control them. We tried to contain them. And instead of fighting us, they disappeared. Do you understand what that means? Ralvik did. Humans hadn't been wiped out. They hadn't failed. They had simply chosen to leave. And now, after all this time, they were coming back. A nervous murmur spread through the council. The realization was sinking in. Earth had never been lost. Humans had never vanished. They had been waiting. One of the delegates, a member of the insectoid Hetheri, clicked its mandibles nervously. We must determine their purpose. Are they here for war? Ralvik's mind raced. No species waits in the shadows for centuries without a reason. They must have a plan. Vorn exhaled sharply. And if their plan involves reclaiming their seat, reclaiming their place among the stars. Ralvik hesitated. Then we have to ask ourselves one thing. He looked at the empty seat of Earth, its silent presence now more threatening than ever. Are we ready for their return? But before anyone could answer, another signal appeared on the Council's main data screen. Not text, not encrypted. A fleet movement, and it was heading straight for them. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. The moment the fleet movement appeared on the screen, all logic and control had shattered. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding answers, speculating on what was coming. Some called for immediate military action. Others insisted on diplomacy. But no one could deny the terrifying truth. The humans were coming. Ralvik stood frozen, staring at the massive formation displayed on the central holographic screen. Hundreds, no, thousands, of ships moving in perfect silence, without transmissions, without requests, without warnings. There was no declaration of war, no diplomatic envoy, just a silent approach. Vorn was the only one who remained seated. His expression was unreadable, but his claws tapped rhythmically on the armrest of his chair. A slow, calculating sound. They are not here for talks. A deep voice rumbled from the far side of the chamber. All eyes turned to Supreme General Korak of the Ralzeth Dominion, one of the most powerful military leaders in the known galaxy. His species had fought countless wars. He had seen empires rise and fall. And yet, even he looked uneasy. Ralvik swallowed hard. How do we know that? Korak's reptilian eyes narrowed. Because no species moves like this unless it is prepared for battle. He gestured at the screen. Look at them. No signals. No escort negotiations. Just direct, calculated movement. This is a power statement, not a request for peace. The room fell silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the holographic projection, displaying the fleet's relentless approach. Ralvik forced himself to breathe. We don't even know if these ships belong to humans. What if? It is them. Vorn interrupted, his voice flat. No other species moves like this. No hesitation. No fear. Just precision. Ralvik turned back to the screen. His mind raced. The stories he had read, the whispers of a forgotten race, the records that had been buried in history, none of them could have prepared him for this. If this was humanity, then the universe had no idea what it was about to face. Suddenly, an alert flashed across the screen. Incoming transmission from the unidentified fleet. A wave of tension swept through the chamber. Every delegate stiffened. Put it through, Vorn ordered. The screen flickered. For a moment, only static. Then, a voice. Calm, clear, and impossibly steady. This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Ascendancy. A chill ran down Ralvik's spine. We have returned. The room fell into an eerie silence as Admiral Kane's voice echoed throughout the chamber. The chilling words sent ripples through the council's ranks. The Terran Ascendancy. The name carried weight. It was a name whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a name that had been forgotten. buried under layers of time and myth. Ralvik couldn't help but wonder, how is this possible? The humans, the so-called lost race, were nothing but a faded legend to most of the galaxy's inhabitants. Stories spoke of their violent past, their sudden disappearance, and the countless theories about where they had gone. Some believed they had vanished after a devastating war. Others thought they had been consumed by some mysterious cosmic event. But now, the Terran ascendancy had returned, stronger, more determined than ever. Admiral Kane's voice continued, unwavering. To the Galactic Council, greetings. We've come not as invaders, but as the rightful inheritors of our seat in the Council. You have ignored us for too long, and now we demand recognition. The calmness of the Admiral's tone contrasted sharply with the gravity of his words. He spoke as if he knew the galaxy would not only listen, but would have to yield to the truth of his statement. Ralvik exchanged uneasy glances with the others in the chamber. The humans were claiming what was theirs, and their fleet, silent, menacing, and advanced beyond anything anyone had ever seen, was a testament to their power. Vorn, who had remained eerily quiet up until now, leaned forward in his seat. His sharp eyes glinted with suspicion. What does he mean by rightful inheritors? He murmured under his breath. Korak's voice broke the silence, low and deadly. It means what you think it means. They were once part of the Galactic Council. And now they've returned to claim their seat. The question is, why did they leave? And more importantly, why are they back? The council members looked at each other, a mix of fear and uncertainty hanging in the air. There was one thing they all knew now. This wasn't a mere diplomatic visit. The humans were back, and they weren't asking for a place at the table. They were demanding it. Admiral Kane, Ralvik said, his voice steady despite the growing unease. You claim to have returned, but we have no record of your species. How can we be sure this isn't some trick? Some faction trying to seize what's not theirs. A pause followed, and for a moment, Ralvik feared the transmission might be cut off. Then, Admiral Kane's voice returned, now colder and more commanding. How do you think we've stayed hidden for so long? Do you really believe we left by choice? The galaxy may have forgotten us, but we've been watching. We've learned, and now we come to reclaim what's ours. There was a slight pause, as if Kane were weighing his next words carefully. Make no mistake, we are not here to negotiate. You will recognize us, or you will face consequences you cannot imagine. Ralvik felt the weight of those words. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about politics or power. This was something far deeper. The humans, if they truly were the ancient race they claimed to be, had been hiding in the shadows, biding their time. Now they were ready to reassert their dominance in the galaxy. Across the chamber, the delegates exchanged murmurs. The shock was palpable, but something else lingered too, an underlying fear, an unsettling sense that this was only the beginning of something far greater. Ralvik knew they had to act quickly, but what could they do against a fleet this vast, this organized? How could they prepare for something that had been hidden for so long? What do we do now? A delegate from the Andromedan Federation whispered, his voice tight with tension. Vorn stood, his expression hard. We prepare for war, he said, his words blunt and unwavering. If these humans have the power they claim, we cannot afford to be caught off guard. The room erupted into chaos once again as delegates shouted, some in support, others in disbelief. But all of them shared one unspoken truth. The galaxy was no longer a place of peace. The humans had returned, and they had come with a purpose. In the background, the Terran fleet continued to approach, silent as death, their massive warships cutting through the darkness of space. The message was clear. There was no going back. The humans were here, and they were ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. Ralvik could only watch as the transmission ended, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. The galaxy would never be the same again. Prepare for the worst, Korak growled, and hope it's enough. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was suffocating. Every delegate, every military leader, every ruler of the great civilizations across the stars sat frozen, processing Admiral Kane's words. The humans had returned, not as lost wanderers or a forgotten species begging for recognition, but as conquerors, as rulers reclaiming what was once theirs. Ralvik gripped the armrest of his seat, his mind racing. He had spent centuries studying the rise and fall of civilizations, yet nothing in the galaxy's history could explain the mystery of the humans. They had vanished, erased from records, wiped from existence, as if they had never been part of the Galactic Council. And now, after centuries of silence, they returned with warships that outclassed anything the Council had ever seen. Vorn broke the silence first. His cold reptilian eyes narrowed. "This is an act of war." His voice carried through the chamber like a blade cutting through steel. "They threaten us, demand our submission. We cannot allow this." The Andromedan delegate, a being of pure energy, pulsed anxiously. "We don't even know where they've been. How could they disappear for so long and return so powerful?" Ralvik clenched his jaw. "Because we never asked the right questions," he muttered. Karak, the warlord from the Zorth Dominion, let out a low growl. If they were part of the Council, why was their history erased? What happened to them? The chamber fell silent again. No one had an answer. No records. No warnings. Just silence. Then the holoscreen flickered. A new transmission. But this time, it was not from Admiral Kane. It was from the Council's deepest, most classified archives, files that hadn't been accessed in centuries. The screen lit up with an ancient symbol, a forgotten seal that once belonged to the lost race of Earth. And then the records played. The lost history of Earth. The images were grainy, distorted by time, but the message was clear. The humans had once been a rising force in the galaxy, their technology advancing at a pace that unsettled the other civilizations. They were explorers, builders, but most terrifyingly, they were warriors. 1,000 years ago, the Council had deemed them too dangerous. Their minds were too adaptable, their bodies too resilient. They had won battles that should have been unwinnable. They had survived wars that should have destroyed them. And so, the Council made a decision. They united against Earth. They unleashed fleets upon fleets, burning human colonies, destroying their outposts, pushing them to the brink of extinction. It was a war unlike any other, a war that should have ended humanity forever. But humans did not die. Instead, they disappeared. The records showed their final transmission. A single message sent from the last known human fleet before vanishing into the void. "We are leaving, but we will return." The screen went dark. The chamber was silent once more, but now it was no longer just fear that gripped the Council. It was dread. Because the humans had kept their promise. They had returned. And this time, they were not asking for a seat at the table. They were coming to take it. The Council chamber was in chaos. Some delegates shouted for war, others demanded negotiations, but none could deny the truth. Humanity had returned, and they were no longer the young, naive species that had once sat among them. Ralvik's hands trembled as he reviewed the classified records once more. The humans had been erased from history, not because they had fallen, but because the Council had feared them. The war that should have ended them had only pushed them into the shadows, where they grew stronger, smarter, and more advanced. Vorn, the reptilian warlord, slammed his fist on the table. "We must strike first. If we allow them to dictate the terms, we are already defeated." Korak let out a guttural laugh. "And what makes you believe we can win? Have you seen their warships? Their technology?" His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "They learned from us. They adapted. And now, they are beyond anything we ever imagined." The holoscreen flickered again. Another transmission. This time, it was not a warning. It was a declaration. Admiral Kane's face reappeared, calm and composed. "Galactic Council, he said, his voice carrying an authority that sent shivers down every spine. For centuries, you erased us from your history, thinking we were gone. But we never forgot. We never forgive. And now, we have returned. His gaze hardened. You have a choice. Surrender or prepare for war. Either way, humanity will take its place among the stars. Then, the screen cut out, replaced by a single image. An approaching human fleet. Thousands of ships, each one radiating power far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. Panic spread through the chamber like wildfire. We cannot fight them, the Andromedan delegate cried. We don't even know the full extent of their capabilities. Ralvik stood, his voice shaking but firm. There is no stopping them. We made a mistake centuries ago. We created this enemy, and now we must face the consequences. The Council's fate was no longer in their hands. Humanity was coming. And this time, they would not be denied. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The once mighty rulers of the universe sat frozen, watching as thousands of human warships filled the holographic display. Their arrival was not a threat. It was a statement. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. Ralvik took a deep breath, his mind racing. There was no escape now. Every attempt to suppress the humans had failed. The empty seat of Earth, which had been a symbol of the Council's power over them, now stood as a reminder of their greatest mistake. A new transmission flickered onto the main screen. Admiral Kane's face appeared once more, but this time there was no anger, only certainty. The time of the Council's rule is over, Kane declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. For centuries, you have dictated the fate of countless civilizations. You crushed the weak, erased those who challenged you, and believed yourselves untouchable. His gaze hardened. But now you stand at the mercy of those you once abandoned. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. Some still held on to their pride, while others trembled in fear. Kane continued, his expression unwavering. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek revenge. But we will not bow. The era of control is over. From this day forward, the galaxy will not be ruled by fear, but by unity. We offer a choice, stand with us, or be left behind. Silence. Then murmurs spread through the chamber. The realization was setting in. Humanity had become something greater than anyone had imagined. Vorn, the reptilian warlord, stood. His voice was hoarse but steady. And if we refuse, Kane's eyes darkened. Then you will witness what happens when humanity is truly unleashed. The chamber fell deathly quiet. No one dared challenge him further. Ralvik exhaled, his hands shaking. He had feared this moment, but deep down, he knew it was inevitable. The Council had underestimated humans, erased their presence, and thought them gone. But now they stood at the center of galactic history, and they were not asking for permission. With slow, deliberate steps, Ralvik turned toward the empty seat of Earth, the one the Council had left untouched for centuries. Then, with a deep breath, he spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. The seat of Earth is no longer empty. The chamber erupted in chaos, but it no longer mattered. Humanity had returned, and the universe would never be the same again.